southbound side. All right. Welcome, Ray.
Welcome to the great event. Everyone, please turn on your cameras.
Jamal's driving.
Yeah, okay. Our today's presenter is a two-time distinguished Toastmaster. Please help me welcome Solarzar Dellaporta. Solarzar, it's all you, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for making it on this rainy evening. So I'm going to share some slides, and I'm actually grateful that for each of you that I can actually see most of you. But if you have questions during any time during this presentation, please, you can, if I'm not seeing a raised hand, say your question out loud. It's, we'll turn this into whatever dialogue we can. Now, before I start, I'm going to show you, just stop back here. How many of you have never actually coordinated or conducted? You may have been a part of a contest, but how many of you have never actually done a contest? Okay, so three. Okay. Now, how many of you have never been a part of any area or division contest at all? Anybody? So you've actually, okay, Sneha. So you've actually got some experience with the idea of a contest itself. You've had some experience with that. The challenge with conducting a contest is the fact that often people don't plan and they don't properly prepare and coordinate. That's about it. It's going to seem a little bit overwhelming as we go through some of this, but it's like everything else we do in Toastmasters. We learn by doing, we learn by what we don't do well, and we learn by what we do well. So I'm just going to go forward. Here's what we're going to cover this evening. When to start planning. We're going to talk about the contest chair, other contest officials, Chief Judge, Toastmaster, Sergeant at Arms, Tech Chair. We're going to skip tech tips, even though I'm sorry I left that in the agenda. And the reason we're doing that is we're going to have a totally separate session on the 23rd of January, specifically for how to do the tech in contests. And I encourage you to attend that if you're able. We're going to talk about contest briefings, contest day, and resources. So let's start with when to start planning. Now is the time to start planning. Don't wait. Don't say, oh, my area contest is until March. I'll just wait till the last week of February. Nah, not going to work. Now is the time to start planning. Now, Abhijit had put out in WhatsApp, the district calendar, and people started plugging in their contest dates. That's the first step of starting to plan. So you can never start planning too soon. You want to announce your contest dates to your clubs. You want them to know when your contest is and use that as an intro also to say, hey, we're going to do our area G3 contest on March 15th. Go ahead and start planning your club contests, and here's some information I can pass to you about how to do that. And hopefully after tonight, you'll have some information. You want to promote your club contests as your lead into the area contest. In other words, we're not in the business of just saying, come to my contest. I want you at Mike. No, we want them to do their contest. We want them to get the experience, and we want them to kind of have the contestants. We don't have a contest without contestants. So we're building a ladder from club to area to division to district. And that's what we start to do by our promotion for our area starts by promoting our club contest at the club level to our club officers, and use that as an intro to, and we're going to have our area contest on the Tall Tales and international speech on this date. And we want your club members to participate. You want to review the contest scripts. I have seen more bad contests because they didn't review the scripts. Now we're providing you scripts, and guess what the best part of that script is? You can adjust it, you can revise it, you can edit it. Don't take out the core elements. Like there are certain things. You do want to talk about time. You do want to talk what the lights are going to be like. You do want to talk about how you announce speaker, speech title, speaker. And you do want to have the rules by the chief judge, but you can adjust it to fit your venue, to fit your contest. It's yours to adjust, but the script gives you the flow. It gives you the instructions. It gives you the guidelines. And I've seen more contests where a Toastmaster say, okay, what's next? What am I doing next? Jennifer, okay, thanks. And they kind of go on. It's like, at least from the contest perspective, you don't have to be rigid, but we want it to flow. We have nervous contestants. They have their butterflies are coming up to their throat. We want to keep it flowing for them, and we want to keep the other members who are watching it engaged. So review the scripts. Review the scripts. Ooh, I almost did the wrong thing and left the meeting. That would have been interesting. So remember to review the contest scripts. Also, begin recruiting a contest chair. Now, people are going to say, oh, you don't need to do that. You don't need a contest chair. Hogwash. Hogwash. You're the area director, division director. Okay. You're going to be working with the contest chair, but here's two things that you're not going to be. You are not going to be your own contest chair. You need somebody to help you coordinate the activities. And two, you're not going to be your own tech chair. You need somebody else to manage your tech so that you're not running around during the contest trying to be an area director, a contest chair, and a tech chair. Get somebody to help with that. Now, I'm going to say find somebody who has familiarity with contests, but the truth is, Abhijit and I were talking before we started. The year I met Abhijit, he came and did a presentation at a club that we were trying to build at that time. And then after that, Abhijit, with about 1 year's experience in Toastmasters, agreed to be a contest chair for one of the contests at District. I think that's a pretty big thing to jump into with no contest experience, but he did it. He asked me to be his chief judge, but he did it. What I'm saying is at the area level, you can get someone from one of your clubs to be a contest chair. And when I say get someone, I do recommend you try maybe kidnapping their family members, holding them until after the contest. I mean, but actually just encourage someone to work with you to be the contest chair, but let them be that extension so you don't try to do it alone. Do not try to do it alone, but don't let go of your contest chair. Don't turn it over to them. You want to recruit a chief judge. The chief judge we're going to talk about a little later, Toastmasters, Sergeant at Arms, and Tech Chair. Now, often in contests, you'll see at an area or even a division level, they'll try to have maybe the same Toastmaster. If you can, get a Toastmaster for each contest. A couple of reasons. One, the most is, it allows Toastmasters to get that experience, have an opportunity to do it, so they become more experienced and more ready to do it again next time. So whenever possible, try to get a Toastmaster for each contest, one for Tall Tales, one for International. If you can't do that and you end up with one Toastmaster, fine. The world's not going to come to an end. It's not going to change your taxes, and Lord knows it's not going to bring us peace without honor. So but try to get as many people involved as part of the team working on it so they can gain the experience with the process. Does that make sense? Latha, that wasn't a question, right? That was just you spreading out your hair and showing me how lovely it is, right? Yeah, she didn't realize. Yeah. All right. So let me go ahead to the next thing. The contest chair is what you want before you get your chief judge, your Toastmaster, or your Sergeant at Arms. They all are going to have some responsibility to the contest chair. Ideally, someone with prior contest experience. I mentioned that I was going to say this, but it doesn't have to be. But it's good if it's someone who's organized, someone that you've seen has some organizational ability, because they're going to help manage the different pieces as we go along. They oversee the contest team and the contest from start to finish. That's another reason why you, as the area director or division director, you want to be aside from that while the contest is going on. You are actually a host or hostess for the whole event, but the contest chair is the conductor. they're the ones that are running it. They're the ones that are seeing the pieces stay in place. If somebody gets off, it's the contest chair that needs to follow up with them. You can actually stay as the host or hostess. You're a little bit above that. They work with the area division director. You're never separate from your contest chair. You need to work with them. Toastmasters, as I mentioned, preferably one for each contest. You can have a chief judge for each contest also. If you can't, just have a good chief judge, a sergeant at arms, and a tech chair. Now, here's what you need to download the speech contest packages. Now, these are the two links. However, here's the however. We're going to give you a link to a Google Drive that has everything on it. It's everything that's broken down. That material will end up on the district website as well. But since we didn't get the district website updated in time, you're going to actually have the information that you need from the speech contest kits. But you can still download them. Feel free to do it. It's free. There's no reason why you can't do it. But the material will be on this Google Drive for you. So you don't have to search all over. You want to create contestant information packages. They get a speech contest rule book. They need to be advised of the rules. They need to know the rules. Their profile sheet, which is kind of their bio sheet that they're going to turn in, their certificate of eligibility and originality, and an appropriate contest ballot. Now, sometimes people miss the fact of it's good for the contestants to know what they're being judged on. Oh, I'm really entertaining at my club and they love me. I'll go up to the area and they'll really love me there and I'll be entertaining. But maybe my club put me through because I was really good. Maybe I didn't have a good opening. Maybe I didn't use good grammar. Maybe some of the criteria that are on the judging form I'm not familiar with. Let them know what the judging form is. That's also part of the briefing to the contestants when we brief them later on, to let them know what's on the judging form. I go fast, but if there's any questions at any time, please jump in. Now, you're not going to have contestants right away, but you could start putting together your sample email. Now, we're going to I didn't do this yet. I'm going to populate up on the Google Drive some sample emails for contestants, for judges, and for other functionaries. I just didn't put them up there yet. Those may not end up on the district website, but you're not going to lose access to this drive anyway. But you want to have a way to reach out to your clubs to say, here's what's going on. It's contest season. We know we want you to get trained in your officer roles, but it's also contest season. Please plan in February to have your club contest for Tall Tales and for International. And here are the rules. And you can send them a copy of the rule book. They can come back to you with any questions. You can streamline the rule book rules down for them and say, here's what you need to do, and here's the eligibility. But whatever you want to do, you use that as the precursor notification of your area contest.
Solarzar, do we send this to just the president and the VPE or to all club officers?
Well, I generally start with, that's a good question, Rovina. I generally start with the president and VPE to let them know that this is coming up. And then I always do a follow-up, which may include other club officers. Now, each of you have visited your clubs, and we all know sometimes it might even be the sergeant at arms that's the most responsive officer of the group. Include them in it. I wouldn't exclude anyone, but I would include based on where I've seen response. I have one club, for instance, I have a wonderful VPE. She's always responsive. I mean, I could send her the time of day. She's kind of like Sonia. She's in Texas. I could send to her, hey, it's 4:15, and she'd say, oh, thank you, Solarzar. I really appreciate that. She's just so responsive. So wherever she were to end up on the officer list, she's always going to be on my list to notify.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Now, the timing material, I recommend you get the timers. You get a set of timer backgrounds that are the same for your timers. Don't rely on your timers to say, oh, I got mine. Nope. The reason you want them the same is, of course, you have two timers. One, the primary timer, for some reason, has a technical issue and has to bow out. You don't want to change the timing backgrounds the way they look to the contestants. You want to keep it very consistent for them. Now, I've provided in the Google Drive, I've provided sample timing backgrounds. I know you all have them. I'm going to tell you why I provided the ones I did. There's a couple of reasons. One is the ones I have say green and they're green, say red when they're red, say yellow if they're yellow, because I'm accommodating the fact that the color may go by somebody, but the word may not. So I try to use the backgrounds that have them both. The other thing, personal preference, not a rule. Nobody's going to come to your door if you don't do this. But I personally prefer to have the timer background to be the white background with the black letters timer. And the reason I prefer the white with the black letters is because if you look down even right now on the gallery view, you see all of these black squares for people who have their video off. I want the contestants to easily identify the timer from someone that has their video off. So I ask the timers to use the white background with the word timer on it. Now, those are up on the Google Drive. You can look at them, decide if you want to use them. Whatever you choose to use, make sure both your timers have the same backgrounds. Like Ray was a timer at one of the contests, and one of the things that we kind of went through is like if Ray was primary, and let's say Nagaraj was secondary, and Ray had the technical issue and had to slip out. When Nagaraj is doing his backgrounds now, we want it to look the same as what they expected from Ray. We don't want them to look different. Does it make sense? All right. All right, now the judges. Now the judging material is going to excuse me, include a judge's guide and ballot. So the judges are going to, when they're selected, they're going to have a speech contest rule book. If they're tall tales, they'll have a tall tales ballot. The tiebreaker for that will have a tiebreaker ballot. And for the international, of course, they're going to have the same thing. Every judge gets a guide and ballot. They also get the ballot that goes with their contest. The regular judges don't get the tiebreaker, but every judge must complete a certification of eligibility and code of ethics. Now, I'm going to come back, by the way, to the judges in a little bit and go over their code of ethics and their qualifications. Sonia, you have a question.
Yeah, just a quick one. I saw a couple times you had listed tall tales. Are we doing tall tales this spring or?
We're doing tall tales and international.
Okay.
So tall
And
tales.
how many judges should we have for each of the contests?
Who asked that?
Padma.
Oh, Padma. Okay. We'll touch on that later, but I'm going to answer your question now. So the minimum recommendation for area is 5. But let's take a look at how many clubs you have. If you have 4 clubs, you want to have at least 1 from each club. You don't want to have 2 from any club and 1 from the other clubs. You want to keep it balanced to the number of clubs in your area. Now, let's say, I don't want to get confusing, but let's say you have 4 clubs and only 3 bring contestants to the contest. Then you want to, since you need to have at least 5 judges, you want to try to get 2 judges from each of those clubs that have contestants so that it's always balanced. There's never an overabundance of judges from another club that could potentially be seen as swaying the vote. Did that make sense? Yeah. So you need a minimum of 5, and we'll talk more about that at the division level and also district. We generally try to go, as a matter of fact, so you know, we go 2 from every division. So we try to go minimum of 12, and we often try to go 3 from each division if we can get them. Now, the winner certificates, which are also in what you're going to see in the thing, are fillable forms. You know, the winner certificates can be filled in. They're PDFs. You fill them in. You can then send them to the winners by email. And so are the participant certificates. They're fillable forms. You can pre-fill them for everybody prior to the contest and have them ready to go after the contest by sending them out. So these forms are nice. Now, everybody likes a thank you, but it's kind of nice to have a thank you in your hand as well, too. So it's nice to receive an email with the certificate if possible. Now, this leads to the question of, but you need somebody to do your certificates. At the contest level, if you don't have somebody who can fill out those winner certificates, then you at least need a slide that says, here's the winners, and you do them third, second, and first in that order. You actually don't have someone who can do your graphics at your contest, then don't try to handle slides yourself. You kind of need somebody to do that. Your contest chair is busy with the contest. You're busy working with the dignitary to announce the results. You don't have time to be filling out slides. And don't do like some have tried to do and say, well, the chief judge will do it. I'm chief judge too many times, and I'm going to tell you, you don't want to ask me to do that because you won't like the answer. The thing is, I'm busy tallying the ballots. I'm busy trying to report out the results. So if you're going to do the certificates at your contest, you need somebody to do that. Just keep that in mind. It's one of those little things. That may be the only thing that person does is those certificates, and that's fine. And you may be able to get someone who's willing to do that for you so that they're ready to go when you're ready to announce your winners. Once again, don't try to take all this on yourself as things you'll do.
But these certificates don't need graphics, right?
No, but you need somebody to actually do this, to be filling in the names, to put the names.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't require graphics experience. Good question, Ray.
Is it required to do that during the contest, or can we just send them out after the fact?
For the winner certificates, not the participants, for the winner certificates, very often the winner certificate is brought to the screen as the winner is announced. So, Solarzar has won third place because he doesn't deserve anything higher. Here's his certificate, that type of thing. And then you'll show the second place, and then you'll show the first place. So you show them all individually. Now you can do it with a PowerPoint slide as well. You don't have to do it at the contest. That's the only thing I was saying. It's good to have that showing of something when you announce the winner's name. It also sometimes helps the dignitary. For instance, at an area contest, your dignitary announcing the winners may be your division director. At a division contest, it may be the district director or the PQD. It may not be you yourself announcing the winners. So it helps too if that comes up for the person to see it. They've been given the results, but it helps to see them. So they say, okay, first place is Ray Lou in Tall Tales. And it's right there in front of them. They can see it. They announce it right. Yeah. And Ray is happy. So. Okay.
By the way, I don't qualify to be a contestant in my area.
No, well, actually, none of you qualified to be contestants because you're area
Yeah.
directors or division directors. So, yeah. But here tonight, Ray, you're first place for Tall Tales.
Yeah.
So, all right. Let's see, even more. Here we go. Now, that may seem like a lot, but we're not done. There are also counter forms, a counter tally sheet, and an online tally form. I'm going to break away right now to show you the online tally form, which is included in the resources. This is the online tally form. Now, one of the ways that you use this is that working with the ballot counters, you can just put in results. 3, 2, 1. Notice the tallies are automatically tallying down here. So you prepare this in advance. Your chief judge can prepare this in advance, putting in the judges' names, putting in the contestants' names up here. And then as they're tallying the ballots, they can use this spreadsheet to just put in their results. There's one for Tall Tales. There are tabs at the bottom. There's one for international. And they'll automatically tally the results. So they don't have to worry about mathematically about doing this. So this tally sheet is also in the drive that we provided, and it will also be on the district website when they update the contest resources tab. So. Now, you got to schedule dry runs, and we're going to talk about these two, and we're going to talk about another dry run later. But you need a dry run for contestants. And what is the dry run for contestants? One is it lets them know how the contest is going to flow at a very high level, when they're going to be called up, how they're going to be addressed, however you choose. The script says, can you see the timer, things like that. The timer, are you ready? Timer's ready. All those types of things. The language you choose to use there, where we're doing two things. We're verifying that their audio is audible. We can hear them and they can hear us. We're also verifying that they can see the timer. And that's what we're trying to do before we introduce them. Then we'll explain how we introduce them by their name, speech title, name. Then we'll have also a dry run with them to let them see how the timing lights will look by the timer for each person, each one doing it, to make sure they feel comfortable with that. And that's what the dry run is. We also tell them the contest rules. Chief Judge will let them know about the eligibility. For instance, in international, you have to have two paths in a path in order to be qualified for that. Whereas we don't necessarily have that for Tall Tales, but they have to know those rules, and they also have to know what the protest criteria is. We're going to get to protest a little later, so I'm going to stay away from it for right now. Also, if we had a contest where they needed to be escorted to a breakout room, the sergeant at arms would be the one doing that. But Tall Tales doesn't require that, and international doesn't require that. So we need the dry run for the contestants for the minimum of walking them through, checking their audio. We're going to touch back on that, and checking their video. The dry run for judges, ballot counters, and timers is different. That's really focused on how do you submit your results? What are the criteria for the judging? How do you submit them? How do the timers submit their timing? How do they report to the chief judge over time? And how do the ballot counters and chief judge compile all that into that ballot tally? So we still need to go through all that. One of the things I forgot to mention is the chief judge will also share at both of these dry runs the criteria for protests. So we want to make sure. We're going to touch protests a little separately. And you need a tech chair. The tech chair needs to be at both of these dry runs. Now, the tech chair doesn't have to be the most savvy technical person but they have to be someone that's competent, familiar, and comfortable with whatever your online platform is, whether it's Zoom or if you're choosing to use Teams or some other platform. But they need to be comfortable and savvy with that, because they need to be ready to resolve issues technically. Sometimes, especially in the dry runs, for those of you who've done contests, it's a simple issue of really checking the mic, make sure there's good audio from that contestant, that they can be heard. And then, which we'll get to the day of the contest, checking it again, because some of them get smart and decide to change it. We also want to start looking around for Toastmasters. Who should be a Toastmaster of a contest? Now, the Toastmaster does not have to have any unique qualifications. They don't have to have miles and miles of educational credits. They don't have to do anything, but they have to be someone that can do at least one thing. You got to be able to read. You got to be able to read that script. I'm just telling you, because I've seen too many that don't. Here, very quickly, this is a copy of the paper tally sheet and the timer record sheet that are included in the packet that's on the drive, just so you know it. Time for a break. Okay, we're back. Now let's talk about the chief judge. The chief judge must be familiar with the contest rulebook, because the chief judge is the person that's actually going to be enforcing the rules. And I've seen experienced Toastmasters let things go by that needed to be addressed. So it's not that they have to be an expert, but they at least have to be familiar and ready to jump in or question. They have to be very familiar with the contest script because they have to understand the flow so that when things get off flow. For instance, we had a contest several years ago where it was during the early days of Zoom contests, early COVID time. And what happened is someone spoke that should have been muted. So the tech chair muted everybody, but there was a contestant speaking. Then he unmuted her, and the contest chair muted everybody, and the contestant was still speaking. So there is an actual rule in Toastmasters to address this. They didn't address it that way. The contestant continued to speak and then said, well, could I start over? And they let the contestant start over. So you're going to see in your script saying they don't get to start over. If this contestant was over 3 minutes into the presentation, she doesn't get to start over. But she does get 30 seconds extra time, just like everybody does. But here's the thing. Toastmaster says you don't get to start over. You get to stop where you are, hold your place, and contestants need to be advised this, and then restart it once the technical issue is resolved. And if the technical issue was people kept, then we needed to tell her to stop. Stop, hold right there, and we'll come back to you, hold that place and come back. Now that's challenging for any contestant, but in fairness to all the other contestants, they don't get to start over just because suddenly my mother comes in and tells me to clean my room while I'm speaking at the contest, you know. She just chooses to ignore that notice that says, don't come in, you know, I don't get to start over. But the chief judge needs to know these things and be practical. Now we had another one where a contestant broke down during the middle of their presentation and then went off and kind of pulled themselves together and was brought back on to speak again. Here's the thing, very simple rule. They don't get credit for the judges were told, just go ahead and evaluate. Just go ahead and judge. But that person actually doesn't qualify to speak. Once you take the stage after announcing, that's your time, you go forward. So the chief judge needed to know that. You know, nobody else needed to know that, but the chief judge needed to know that. So that's why you want a chief judge that has some familiarity with the rules. Okay, I hope I'm not scaring you away from people being chief judges, but you want somebody who's willing to look into the rule book, see what it says, and deal with the issue that way. That's all. So your chief judge needs to be familiar. The chief judge briefs the contest functionaries on the rules, on the eligibility, ensures compliance with the contest rules, briefs and verifies judges' eligibility, briefs and verifies contestant eligibility, briefs and manages the ballot counters, and manages the judging process and protests. And let's go to judges. We're going to go to protests in a little bit. I have an unfortunate history of having protests at a lot of the contests I've been a chief judge at. And it's not a part of my history I'm proud of. But the judges, as we talked earlier, you need to have a minimum of 5 at the area. Ask the club to have at least 5. You know, a club can actually have everybody act as a judge in a club contest. They don't have to be rigid about the rules. It's a good training exercise for them. You know, so one time, actually, I was chief judge of an area contest and the area director had no judges. So I turned the entire audience into judges, with the exception of the contestants in either contest. Everybody was now a judge. And we went through an explanation of how to do a judge. But the minimum is, the best part is, it's a learning exercise. So at a club level, you can let your clubs know, should have at least 5, but have all the members participate as judge if they're not a contestant. Let them all get that experience. Area, you want at least 5. And as we talked about, you want at least 1 for each club in your area. And if that doesn't bring you up to 5, then you're going to need to have 2 for each club in your area, or get a judge from outside your area, someone who's not familiar with those clubs. So that way they can't say, oh, you know, you had 3 people from Silicon Speakers and they were all the judges. No wonder their contestant won. You just want to avoid that. Division is 7, very same thing. Division has an additional requirement that district area doesn't. In area, we try to avoid having people from the same clubs as contestants, but we can't do it. But at division, we have to by the rule book. So at division, the division contestants, we cannot have a judge who's in any club with that contestant. Now, as many of you know, many members are in multiple clubs. You know, certainly in Division A, it's endemic. It's kind of like a rash. So we have to kind of race around to find somebody who's not in any club with that contestant. It's a challenge. We often succeed. We have to succeed. And sometimes, as I said, to do in the area, we have to get people from outside the division just so we can balance it out. District, as I said, we start with 7, but we always have 2 per division and often try to go for 3 per division. The tiebreaker is not a member of your club, your area, your division. Get somebody outside, you know, and each of you can decide how you want to do it, if you even want to do it for each other. Like, I'll come to your contest and be your tiebreaker. You come and be mine. You guys can coordinate that. Make sure it's from outside your area and everything else. The chief judge is the one that should select the tiebreakers because really he or she is supposed to be the only one that knows who the tiebreaker is. It doesn't always work out that way, but it's best if it does. I wanted to go through the judge's certification of eligibility and code of ethics. This is the most current one. I pulled this down yesterday from the TI website. So it says here, must be a paid member, and they must have in an area, division, or district contest. The judge must be a paid member for a minimum of 6 months and have completed a minimum of 6 speech projects in the competent communication manual, still have that in there, or earn certificates of completion in levels 1 and 2 of any path in the Toastmaster Pathways learning experience. Now, they did change the rule book for contestants in international this year to remove the competent communication and to say certificates of completion in levels 1, 2, or DTM. And my recommendation is, even though this says this, the point is you want your judges to have an equivalent eligibility as your contestants. You know, at a minimum, even though Tall Tales doesn't have that same requirement, at a minimum in Tall Tales, you're going to have at least a level 1 and 2. If you're a DTM, you're golden. And same thing at your international, which specifically spells it out. So that's a key thing when you're selecting judges, which is why, by the way, at the club level, it's good to get people having that judging experience so they can start getting familiar with that type of criteria in reviewing a contestant for a contest. Any questions on that? Now, this also is signed by the judges, and I prefer to have these signed. It can be electronically or otherwise, or they can send me back the form as the PDF form and just put in the email, I certify that I'm eligible to serve under the judge's code of ethics. Try to make it as simple as possible, but I want the actual acknowledgement from the judge that they're eligible, just as I do from the contestants. We mentioned this already, always balance the number of judges with the number of clubs, the number of areas, the number of divisions. And at division and district, a judge cannot be a member of any club that the contestant is in. They can't be in any club, not even the one participant. Now, we're going to do a Here Come the Judge session on February 6th, where we're going to do judges training. So I'll be facilitating a panel of Arnie Buss, Linda McLean, Dennis Dawson, and Carl Thormeyer, where we're going to talk about the judge's criteria and also how people should effectively try to work through being a judge and do what works best for them. So this is a cheap and potent plug for Here Come the Judge on February 6th, another great event, and you can find that on the district website under the great events. So he may not have posted it yet because we just completed this today, but that's coming up. Question, oh, woohoo. Abhijit, did I answer your question about the eligibility criteria for the contest?
Yes, but for the tall tales, what is the criteria?
The tall tales criteria is just be a member in good standing of a club in good standing. There's no number of completions or any educational requirement to be in tall tales. So it's also a wonderful time even for new Toastmasters to kind of get in the contest mode to try it out. Now I'm not a big, I'll be honest, I'm not anti-contest and I'm not pro-contest, but I do believe something is the experience of every contest for those who have gone through it. Contest is one of the few times you get to keep reworking that same material over and over again. And you do it in front of different audiences. And it really builds your skill set like nothing else that we do in Toastmasters. So I encourage people to actually participate in a contest. You don't need it for your Toastmaster experience, but it will make you a better speaker. No question. Did you want to say something, Abhijit? You look like you did.
You're good. I'm good.
Okay. Well, so I'd like to share with everybody that Abhijit is good so that you can put that in your notes because it actually happened at 6:41 p.m. So,
Solarzar, I have a question.
yes, ma'am.
So when it comes to district leaders like area directors and division directors, we cannot be contestants, but we can participate as a judge, chief judge, Toastmaster, ballot counter, all other functionaries we can?
You can. It's not encouraged, but you can. Yes.
In
But
other
what
areas.
I did say, yes, in other areas, not in your area, preferably not in your division. You know, you
Okay.
can help each other out, cross over so that there's less idea that you're also part of the favoring because you're the one that knows every club. You're the one that knows your Toastmasters. You're the one that knows you like Abhijit, you know, so you're going to vote for him. But
Okay.
actually, he can't compete either. So don't. But so it's really good if you use this as an opportunity whenever possible to get somebody else stepping up into a little bit of a leadership role, even as a judge, even as a ballot counter. It's taking them out of the comfort of that club just a little bit to help get them going forward. But as you said, Jamal, you know, of course, you could help out Daniel. I mean, I wouldn't help out Daniel, but you could help out Daniel at his contest. And
Okay, thank you. One more question is, remember the scenario you mentioned where the tech chair muted all the participants and the contest chair also did the same thing. Was that because there was no communication between the tech chair and the contest chair? What would have been the correct way of doing it? So
that's a really good question. I'm glad you asked that. So let's move on. Okay. No, Jamal, the really good question is that's one of the things that needs to be worked out in advance. Who's going to do that? That really should have been the tech chair. Contest chair should not have taken the liberty of doing that. In addition, the chief judge didn't intercede at all. Now, for instance, that's a point where the chief judge should have stopped the contest. Stopped it right there. Once that contestant was muted, stop the contest. Get the audio worked out and then restart it. Ask the contestant to stay where they were and restart it. That's what should have happened. So ideally, contest chair and tech chair should not be tech. They should not both be doing that. You know, tech chair needs to focus on the tech. They made a mistake, but then the contest chair made the same mistake. And that was, like I said, in the early days of online contests, and there was a lack of coordination between the two of them. So also, you may have a secondary tech chair as well. Sometimes we do that. We've done that in several contests that I've been a part of. They also need to work out the responsibilities of who does what to whom to make sure that there's no overlap. You know, they've got to make sure that those responsibilities are defined. Because as you can see in the online environment, and you've all lived with this for so long, you're familiar with it, it's real easy for a series of mistakes to kind of continue to cascade and build one on the other if you've got multiple people trying to resolve it.
okay, got it. So the waste, so the chief judge can just announce by saying, stop the contest.
Chief
Right.
Judge can stop the contest anytime that there's an apparent infraction or fault. Actually, I will say this, the contest chair actually has that authority to do that too. But if I were your chief judge, I'd say, I'm holding on to that. Don't jump in there. I'm holding on to that. Because
Got it.
I'm pretty good at stopping them.
Okay, thank you.
You know, I
Can you
usually say things
clarify?
like, go ahead.
Can you clarify when you say stop the contest, did you mean pause the contest?
That's very true, Padma. That's a good question. Yes, it is pause the contest. Good question. Thanks for the clarification. So, but you kind of, but I would say stop. I'd actually would say stop. I'll tell you why. Stop is going to get attention, but it is a contest pause. And also at that moment, I would tell the contestant to remember where you were. Now they can go back a little bit. When I said they can't start over, starting over is one thing. Let's say they're a minute into the presentation, they can start over. In the example I gave, she was over 3 minutes into the presentation and they let her start over. You know, but she can start over or start at the beginning of something to make it more coherent when they start back again. But I would say stop the contest because that's going to get attention. But you're absolutely correct. It's a pause. The only one who will actually fully stop the contest completely is the contest chair. And that would generally be when Helen was talking earlier, for instance, about a lot of the people in one of the clubs that people didn't have power. So if power went out and everything went down, the contest chair could stop the contest and reconvene it at a later time. Does that help, Padma, or did I? Good. All right, so now we're at our ballot counters. Now, the thing is, you need 3 ballot counters are best, never less than 2, but 3 are best. I do that because of the way I like to divide up their responsibilities. Now, you're going to get a briefing checklist, and it talks a little bit about how the ballot counters function as well. But I like to have 1 recording into the tally sheet, 1 reading off, and the other one verifying that what's going in the tally sheet is what was said. You know, and yet as the chief judge, I'm there at the same time. So as many eyes as possible on that to make sure the tally is done right the first time and we don't have to go back to it. Then we also need timers. We need 2, primary and a secondary. I've run into problems. Oh, I didn't put it here, but the timers need to have the same capability of timing. Here's what I mean by that. I had one contest at a district level. And I didn't know this. It was a flaw on my part. I was chief judge. One of my timers, their timing went down to a hundredths of a second. Tenths of a second would have been fine, but they went to a hundredths. The other timer didn't go down even to tenths of a second. One contestant, one timer said was over by 30 tenths of a second. The other timer said she was on time because I didn't know you didn't have tenths of a second, and it indicates that she ran long. So I always give benefit of the doubt when the 2 timers conflict. If any timer has the contestant on time, I give the benefit of the doubt to the contestant. After the contest, that timer said, you know, I probably shouldn't have been using that watch I had because it didn't have tenths of a second. And I think she went long. It's like, so unfortunately, the person who should have won came in second, you know, and I don't fault it against the person. So it's important to know that the timers can at least get to tenths of a second. And also, would I advise that timer in the future, should he ever use that same timing device, you still need to circle that and say, I think it was long. You know, because he knew she was running over. He just didn't have what tenths of a second it was. So it's important that the timers, they don't have to have the same device. They can both use their phones, but they have to be able to go to at least a tenth of a second.
There is a question.
Oh, yes, Sonia. Sonia, you asked a question tonight. I'm sorry.
Yes.
There's only one question. Per person.
My question is, can we just enforce that they all have to use the same like online speech timing tool rather than other devices and whatnot?
I wouldn't necessarily do that. I think, you know, you can if you choose to. I wouldn't do that. I mean, it's timing is such a critical element that I want them comfortable. I don't want them necessarily saying you have to use this timer to make sure, as much as can you get to tenths of a second on your timing. If not, then they need to have one that does. And then I would do it. But I wouldn't enforce them to have to do this. So,
Okay.
but you can choose to do it. I mean, at the end of the day, what I'm giving you some guidelines. I'm giving you some experience. And at the end of the day, you're the one running your contest. So you're going to do what seems to work best for your folks. Now, the sergeant at arms, I kind of love the sergeant at arms. They start the contest on time. They can do a quick check with the contest chair, kind of like Abhijit tonight, start it on time. Just start it on time. They announce the attendance rules, keep yourself muted. It's going to be repeated multiple times. I know you're going to get annoyed at that in the script, but we repeat it multiple times because I've yet to be at a contest where someone doesn't unmute. So you want people to stay muted, especially since you don't want saying, did you want this for dinner? What's for dinner? When the contestant is speaking. So announce the contest attendance rules. Also, we do recommend you turn off videos, again, because it keeps it much easier to manage everything if everybody turns off videos. Now, I've been at contests where people said, I want the videos on, and people can be accommodated that way too. No hard and fast rule. It's a management rule for what works. Now, I put the note just so you'll have it for later that they accompany contestants to breakout rooms when they're used, but we're not using breakout rooms for Tall Tales or International, so we won't have that experience. The sergeant at arms should also be kind of a backup. Now, we're going to be doing a great events tech chair extraordinaire by Carrie Lynn Morgan on January 23rd, Monday. You can also find this on the District 101 website. So this is a good thing to get all of the background on how to manage your contest. And Carrie's been doing this since we started online contests. So she has background and stories and experience, and she's done what works and she's done what doesn't work. So when she's sharing, it's good information. What to expect from a contest Toastmaster? I personally expect a deposit of $1,500 to my offshore account. And that's just the down payment, but I haven't been successful, so I don't know. Be certain he or she can read. I said that before. I will, Jamal, thanks. How she can read. Share sarcasm. The reason I say that is all these Toastmasters that don't seem to know what's in their script. They need to know their script. They need to know their script. The other thing they need to know is the contest is not about them. It's about the contestants. Years ago, when we did regional contests, we actually do them, but they're electronic now, and then we do the semifinals and finals at the international. I was Toastmaster at a regional contest, and at that time, the first vice president, who then became international president at the meeting, came up to me because he commented to me that he hadn't seen someone give as much attention to the contestants as I did as Toastmaster. I never made it about me. Now, honestly, I never thought it was any other way. I am going to mention it because he mentioned it to me. But we have to remember, it's not about, and I'm contest Toastmaster, it's not about my cleverness. It's not about me. It's not about what I think. It's about the contestants. It's the contestants and introducing the contestants to everyone who's attending. So the Toastmaster must be ready to make the contest about the contestants. And the contestant interview is about getting to know the contestants. I know we hate to ask, what club are you from? How long you've been in Toastmasters? But why do we ask that? Because we don't know. We're just trying to get pieces of information about the person. What club are they on? What brought you to Toastmasters? Why did you select this speech topic? What was it about this? We want to try to get to know the contestants a little bit on a human level. There's another practical reason for the interview, which we'll touch in a bit, and they also need to learn how to pronounce contestants' names and their speech titles. I don't know, it's tough sometimes, even when we have guests at a club, we may not know how to expect a name. The contest Toastmasters for each contest must be able to pronounce their names. We don't want to go to a contest and say, Sunya, did I say that right? Is it Sunya? Okay, and then you say, no, it's Sonia. Okay, Sunya Stoffer. Why,
Actually, it's Sonia.
yeah, I know. I know. That's why I'm saying it wrong. But that's why I'm trying to say is we want to know that exactly what the name is and what their speech title is. And I think that that's just a sheer level of courtesy and professionalism. And the Toastmaster needs to be flexible with last minute changes. So, if we said we're going to do this right after we introduce the contestants, and then the contest chair interjects and says, we need to change that for later, just go with this. They need to be able to deal with that flexibility. So what do we expect from a contest Toastmaster? They read the script. They understand that it's about the contestants. They can bring personality into it, but it's not about them. It's also why I asked Abhijit tonight to just introduce me as me. At a contest, you do not need the resume of the Toastmaster. Why? It's not about them. It's about the contestants. We just need to know that Solarzar Dellaporta is you can say distinguished Toastmaster, but Solarzar Dellaporta, distinguished Toastmaster, is contest Toastmaster. You don't need to know my background. It doesn't matter. It's about the contestants. Also, I've seen some folks that look at the interview as just, I asked the club, I ask how long, and I thank them, and I move on. Remember, we're trying to get to know the contestant a little bit. So at least act like you're interested. Now, prior to the contest, it's encouraged that you let the Toastmaster be the point of contact for the contestants. Now, when you're going into your area contest, you might find this a little challenging. Maybe I'm going to tell you, say, hey, Solarzar, would you be the contest Toastmaster for Tall Tales? Well, I'm going to compete in Tall Tales in my club, and we're doing that on the 12th. I'll let you know after that. So maybe you don't necessarily have me right away, but you could still be looking around for people that you think you can bring up to those roles. But they should then become the point of contact for your contestants, and you would notify the clubs, let me know your contestant's name, and then after that, your Toastmaster reaches out, sends the judging ballot, the bio, the eligibility forms. What happened also at that regional conference, I don't think I've been a contest Toastmaster since then, come to think of it, but at that regional conference, one of the contest chair came up to me afterwards, and he said he never saw somebody who gave as much care to the contestants as I did, because I did make everything about them. I made my promotional briefing at the beginning of the contest. I made my care. I made my interviews. It was all about them. It was all about, and it was just what seemed natural to me at the time when I did it. I'd done it many times at district, but it just seemed natural at me. So it's good that the Toastmaster and the contestants start establishing their rapport so that they recognize they've got an issue. Get in touch with that Toastmaster. That Toastmaster is there to be your friend, to help you.
A question.
Go ahead, Ray.
So is it up to the Toastmaster to send the information package to the contestants, or is it the contest chair?
Well, I'm going to tell you right now, the contest chair can do it. Actually, the area director can do it. Division director can do it. But I'm only recommending that the Toastmaster do it so they start establishing that direct contact and rapport. Is it a requirement? Absolutely not. Again, like I'm saying, I'm giving you a lot of things and guidelines as to why I recommend them. If you don't do it that way, you have the contest chair do it, no problem. Some contest chairs, especially if they've been a contest chair before, may prefer to do that because they want to make sure they've got the contact with that contest chair, but they should include the Toastmaster in all that communication as well. Because the forms, a contest chair may want to keep track of the forms coming back. The reason I asked that the Toastmaster do that, again, is establishing the rapport with the contestants. So you can choose how you, going back to even Sonia's question, you can choose how you want to do that based on your contest chair, based on your Toastmasters. Does that help answer your question, Ray?
Yeah.
All right. Let the chief judge be the point of contact for the judges, ballot counters, and timers. And again, going back to Ray's question, contest chair may want to do all that outreach, but at the same time, the chief judge is the one that needs to know that they're eligible. Same thing with the contestants, and that they're qualified and that they understand the process. So I prefer that the chief judge does that, but that's me. You know, chief judge is the one to find the tiebreakers, though, because the chief judge is supposed to be the only one who knows who the tiebreakers are. Now, the tiebreaker ballot, as you can see, lists everybody, and I'm sure most of you have seen one of these. So if you have 10 contestants, they write out every contestant. And here's a quick understanding, and I'm going to go jump out of here and jump back. Come on, Solarzar. There we go. Jump back here. So let's say I've got contestant 1 has 5, and contestant 2 has 5, and contestant 3 has 3. Now I've got a tie for first place. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to that tiebreaker's ballot. And if the tiebreaker says they have contestant 2 as number 1, then contestant 2 automatically wins that. They get that extra, just 1 point, just 1 point. Whoever you hit first on the tiebreaker's ballot gets the point to break the tie. Does that make sense? It's a very simple process, but people get confused with that. And they might come to you and say, what do I do if there's a tie? It's very simple. On that tiebreaker ballot, as you saw, you've got first, can you see the tiebreaker ballot? Yes. First, second, third, fourth, fifth. So the first name I come to is the first one that gets the point to break the tie. We don't do it the way we do normal judging. So when you saw me using 5, 3, and 1, first place gets 5 points, second place gets 3 points, third place gets 1 point. You'll see that. But a tiebreaker's ballot is just about where is the name in the ballot. Okay. And let me quickly go back to that tally sheet, since I'm using the one that's actually up there. I don't want to leave it with data in it. That would confuse people. Okay. Now I'll just stop that share. All right, let's go back to the slides, because this is so exciting for you, I know. Now, prior to the contest, tech chair determines the best way to do the contestant audio and video. Let your tech chair work that out. A key thing is the contestants need to come to the dry run with the audio and video setup they intend to use at the contest. I can't tell you how many contests I go to that suddenly they show up on contest day with a new headset, a new microphone, a new something. They need to actually be told at the dry run, if you're going to change that setup, let us know, because we need to test it before contest day. Because if there's a problem on the day of the contest, we're kind of out of luck. Time is short. The tech chair can't spend all their time fixing their audio video on the day of the contest, because the tech chair has to do the contest. So it's very important. It's because of the online contest, we've been drawing speaking order at the dry runs or a few days before the contest. You're going to get the link too for randomorg.list if you've ever used the randomizer. It's just a little link. I think I have one up. Let me see if I've got that. Let's try this. And can you see the list randomizer? Part 1, enter list names. Yeah. And you would just put the names in here, you know, first name, you know, second name, you know, and then tell them to randomize, and it'll sort them any way it wants. Okay, first name and second name misspelled came up in that way. But essentially, what a lot of folks like to do is put the names into the random list organizer with the contestants watching, hit random, and then they can see the speaking order and they know what it is. So you get the link for that also as part of what you're getting. So just, we recommend you can do it at the dry run. You can do it a few days before. You can also, I've seen, we used to do it in-person contests for those who remember them. We did them the day of the contest in person. at the start of the contest. Okay, there's a lot of reasons why that doesn't necessarily work as well for the online, but we won't go into all that. But we've also had where the drawings have been done the night before with the chief judge and contest chair and Toastmaster observing the drawing, so to speak, with the randomizing. And that's sometimes brief. So do whatever seems to make the most sense. Report the speaking order to the chief judge to notify the judges. So this is one of the reasons too. We give it to the judges so they can pre-prepare their ballots in the online environment to actually have the names in the order of the speakers. Chief judge briefs the contest chair, Toastmaster, judges, contestants, tech chair on the protest process. This is prior to the contest. This can be done as part of those dry runs, and the chief judge is in charge of the protest process, even though rulebook says contest chair or chief judge. But again, you need one person ruling on that, and the chief judge is the one that's going to have to coordinate the hearings. Now, let's talk a little bit about protests. Yes, peace in our lifetime. Protests are limited to eligibility, originality, and a reference to another contestant's speech. So I'm in the room, Padma gives her tall tale. I can't start by saying, well, as Padma said in her tall tale, or any other reference to Padma's speech. That's an automatic disqualification. Protests can only be lodged by judges or contestants. Now, protests can sometimes, I've often asked my contest chairs, just leave it to me when I'm chief judge, and they're usually good with that. Most don't want to get involved in it. And it can only be lodged with the chief judge or contest chair, and it must be prior to the announcement of winners. We all want to protest after the winners are announced, or almost all of us want to protest after the winners are announced. So at the last district conference last spring, there was a protest improperly submitted. I was the chief judge. The protest was improperly submitted, and I chose, not necessarily properly, but I chose to not hear the protest because it was for the contestant who was in last place. So I didn't want to go through the process of hearing the protest to disqualify the contestant who was in last place. And the Toastmaster who lodged a protest against me because of that. So you should, I'll share that, and I'm still here. You should really honor each protest. What happens with a protest is it's leveled to the chief judge. There's a process for it, and he didn't follow the process, which is also another reason I said not going to go through it now. We're almost at the end here, going to report the results. So every contestant would have had to be disqualified for that protested Toastmaster to even be considered to go to the next level. So, but what happens is the protest is given, then the judges are convened, not the ballot counters, not the timers. The judges are convened with the chief judge. The protest is presented as it was presented. Often, depending on the protest, I'll ask the protester to come in and state their case, because sometimes it may not be as clear. But then the protester leaves, and the contestant is asked to come in and respond to the protest. Then the contestant leaves, then the judges vote whether to uphold the protest or turn down the protest. It's not a simple it's a simple process, but it takes time, which is why in that case too, I'll just let you know, I said, not going to do it. So was I proper? No, I wasn't proper, but I wouldn't change my decision at this point because life was not going to change for anybody by hearing that protest, but it would have drug out the contest. If somebody is disqualified from a protest, just like any disqualification, they're to be notified prior to the end of the contest by the contest chair, not the chief judge, by the contest chair. So just be familiar with that. Make it as easy and as efficient as you can. Do a script walkthrough with the Sergeant at Arms, Toastmasters, Chief Judge, Contest Chair. And this is, remember, you're doing all of this as an area and division governor, director as well, not just these people named here. You're a part of this process. This is your contest. They're running it for you. You're overseeing it. Don't leave it just up to them. Do the script walkthrough. It also should address how do we handle technical interruptions, like we talked about with the muting and unmuting? How do we handle protests if a protest happens? Who do we notify? For instance, when I receive a protest, I notify the Toastmaster, contest chair, and I'll also notify whichever is the appropriate director, area or division director or district, or PQD actually for district as well, that we have a protest. But I notify them and don't tell them the nature of the protest. It's not their business at that point in time. But for instance, if I'm the Toastmaster doing an interview and I say we have a protest, then the Toastmaster needs to know in advance of the contest that you need to come back around, have a couple of pocket questions you can pull out to start going back around and interviewing the contestants with another question, because they need to fill in the time so that there's not a lag or a drag, or somebody's just saying, where's the chief judge? Is the chief judge? I've had that happen too. Where's the chief judge? And also you want to prepare the contest program. And you can do the program in a lot of ways. We've got a couple of sample agendas we're going to put up there, contest programs. But my recommendation is keep it simple. A nice one-page sheet for each contest. Keep them separate. Yes, Padma, you will get the slides after the session as well. So, but only you, because you're the one that asked. Everybody else is. No, the slides will go up in that same Google area with everything else. Actually, they're up there now, just to let you know. So do a morning setup with the functionaries, do an audio and video check with the contestants. I've been to contests where they said, okay, we've covered everything. We don't need to check in before the contest. Check in, check in, check in. We don't know what have changed. I've had functionaries show up at the last minute, even though they're asked to come early. They show up at the last minute. So I like to at least know, and let's say I always ask a half hour early. So if you're ever in an event with me, I'm going to ask a half hour early, and you're going to say, oh, I got to get up that much earlier. But I'm going to ask a half hour early, just so that they're there and I could check off that the functionaries are there. That way I can form a plan of how to fill in a functionary if I'm missing one at the start of the contest. Also, the audio and video check with the contestants. We literally had a contestant one time, that's why I brought it up, changed his microphone, changed his headphone, couldn't get any audio out of him. And one of the non-officials who knew tech worked with him for a half hour. Going into the contest, we rescheduled his starting time, so he became the last contestant speaking till we finally got his audio working. But it all happened before the contest started, but it was a mess. So you need to know if you're going to have that audio problem. So start on
Would you do
time.
an email check?
What's that?
Would you do an email check in the morning?
An email check?
Yeah,
that what
so
you said,
you
Ray?
wait, so you said do a morning setup.
Yeah, audio and
so-
video check. Do an audio and video
Right.
check. And ask functionaries to send. Since you brought that up, Ray, what I always ask my functionaries to do is send me a text in the morning when they show up. I want to do a check, but I ask them to send me a text. So, if we're at a district conference, for instance, they may be there all day. They're just not in that particular room. So it's kind of like, so, Daniel could say, hey, Solarzar, I'm here. I'll get there in time. I'm on my way. I'm just here at the business meeting or something like that. I just need to know that. So I know I'm going to have them when the contest starts. I've mentioned contest start a couple of times. So I want to go back to, when does the contest start? Well, there are two starts. The event starts at whatever the declared time is. Tonight we started at 6 p.m. That was our declared start time. The contest for the contestants start when the Toastmaster introduces that contest. So if Abhijit is the contestant in the international speech contest, and we start the event at 6 p.m. and he's not there, he's not disqualified until Ray, as the Toastmaster, starts the international speech contest. At which point the chief judge would interrupt and say, contestant Abhijit Joshi is disqualified. And then we would continue. All right, let me try to get you out of here at a decent time, sometime this year. Advise everyone to stay out of the chat. Keep the chat for team communication. You can say to them, if you want to send a comment to a speaker, send a personal chat to them, but don't hold chat in the chat. Want to keep the chat clear so that we're looking at chat. The functionaries are looking at chat when they need to get something from chat, and not just everybody saying, oh, that was good. I really liked that. SAA introduces the area division director who will introduce the dignitaries, find out who's registered. The protocol sheet is also in that drive. The chair, the tech chair, the sergeant at arms or contest chair, they can work it out. Post the program in the chat. That's why I started to say preferably one program at a time, one page for Tall Tales. Then when we go to the next contest, one page for international. Keep it simple, or you can do a fancy one. Contestant interviews allow time for the ballots to be tallied. However, in a double contest, when doing two contests back to back, it doesn't matter if that initial contest interview ends earlier, because there's still time to get the tallies in and plenty of time to announce at the end of the total event. But I always tell my international contestant, that's a Toastmaster, have some extra questions. And so if I start going through the interview with the contestants and I get to contestant 2, I've already asked all my questions to 1, I get to 2, I tell them and I send a thing saying we have a protest. They're to just continue on, ask them all questions, then come back around to 1, ask the question to 1, ask the question to 2, but they need to finish all questions to all contestants. If they suddenly find out we're done, the tally's ready, the protest is over, and they're on contestant 2, they still need to ask the other contestants the same questions. We want to make it all look equitable. Hopefully that made sense. Chief judge should report the results to whoever's doing the certificates, the contest chair, and whoever is announcing the results. The contest chair should notify the Toastmaster when the results are in, so the Toastmaster knows how to manage the interview. Results are reported 3rd, 2nd, and 1st, as we mentioned. If there's a disqualification, the fact that there's a disqualification is mentioned, not the name of the contestant. And results are not announced by the chief judge. Not announced by the chief judge. Chief judge does not announce results. That's not his or her place. Disqualified contestants are notified by the contest chair, as I mentioned. And the contest chair or chief judge, they worked it out, prepares the notification to be sent to the next level contest. They can arm wrestle for who does that. Participant certificates can be completed after the contest, sent to all functionaries, all contestants as participant certificates, even those who got a 1st, 2nd, or 3rd. This is the series of resources you're getting in this Google Drive that you'll get the link to. This tiny URL, District 101 contest material, has briefing checklists, certificate forms, chief judge forms, contest planning spreadsheet, international judges ballots, organizing a contest, protocol list, results and notification, rulebook, speaker forms, tall judges ballots, timer and ballot counter, and the timer background. So all of those are being provided to you at no additional cost, just for the charge of your admission fee tonight. So now, Jamal asked about multiple area contests. I won't hold anybody up with that except those who want, but I'd like to, Padma, you have a question, and then are there any other questions before we conclude that part and go into those who want to talk about multiple areas? Padma, please go ahead.
I have 2 questions, Solarzar. One is, what information can we as area directors carry to our clubs for them to hold the club contest in February? My second question is, you have the judges training on February 6th. However, till the end of February, I will not know which of my clubs is sending a contestant. And I will only be able to pick the judges from their clubs if I know they're sending a contestant. How do I work it out?
Well, first place, anybody can go to the judges training. It's not restricted to anyone else. Second thing is, it's going to be recorded just like this one. So they can actually watch the recording of the judges training to use that as a guideline. So what you would do is, again, going back to Sonia's earlier question of the timers, can you make them use this? You don't have to enforce it, but the judge should be qualified based on the judge's eligibility form. 2 is, you don't necessarily have to have a judge from the club with a contestant, as long as you have an equal number of judges and the club for the contestant is represented. You see what I'm saying? So let's say 2 of your clubs out of 4 have contestants. You can have a judge because you have to have 5. You can have a judge from each of your clubs, and then maybe 1 more from outside of your area. So, but the judges' training will be available as a video replay that people can go ahead and review. Plus, the briefing checklist gives a lot of background, and the scripts give a lot of understanding of the eligibility. Any other questions?
So Solarzar, I'm just trying to count the number of people that will need to be recruited for a contest and, to run the contest. I'm coming up with about 14 if we don't go with 3 ballot counters, but go with 2. Does that sound about right? I mean, off the top of your head?
Sure. Well, you need about 2. You
Right.
can always go with 1 Toastmaster for both contests, especially based on
Right.
the size of your area, number of contestants. You can always go with 1 chief judge.
Mm-hmm.
You can use the same ballot counters in both contests.
Mm-hmm.
But you do need to have 2 timers and 2 ballot counters.
Mm-hmm.
And the timers can be for both contests as well. And usually it's better because they're actually, what I try to do is like one's primary this contest, one's primary that contest.
Right.
Yeah.
So a total of about 13 people to run a contest is what I'm coming up with.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Minimum.
Yeah. That's why I did the woman with the towel and the sweats. It's like, it seems like a lot, but you can do it. You can do it. And actually, as you get closer to the contest, you will find that's a good time to where you're going to find ballot counters. The key thing is you want people who are going to be good timers. You want a good tech chair. You want a good chief judge. You want a contest chair. You can get your Toastmasters closer to the contest as well. You may need to sit down and go through that type of briefing. You can get your ballot counters closer to the contest as well. We tend to not respond to things until there's a kind of a deadline or a due date more than anything else. And then again, for the judges, start select. What I have always done when I was a contest chair, or even even a division or area, I've actually gone to all the other contests. For instance, my intention will be to go to each club contest. Out of the club contest, I'll approach somebody. I'll say, Sneha, would you be willing to help at the area contest coming up? And I'll just approach them right there. When I was contest chair for the district contest, I always got my Toastmasters and chief judges from the other divisions of people who performed it at the contest. And then I would fill in the judges from there. Does that help? It's a lot of information. I might have gone kind of fast, and you may have already known a lot of it or some of it, but I hope that was helpful. So, yeah. Oh, Pat. Oh, I thought you were raising your hand, Padma. Any other questions from anyone? And for those who want to know about doing combined area contests, I'll talk about that after, but everybody doesn't need to stay for that.
And back to my first question. What information can we pass on to the clubs for their club contests?
Well, I would tell them first place, I would send your club officers, your president, VP, as we talked. If you want to do all the officers, fine. I'd send them a copy of the rule book. Tell them that we're doing tall tales and international this year. Both contests will advance to district. International winners, of course, will go beyond district to international. I would tell them that tall tales is 3 to 5 minutes. International is 5 to 7 minutes. If they have any questions about doing their club contest, to let you know. And then based on those questions, come back to me with questions and we'll answer them. But I like to try to lead the horse to water and let them decide if they're going to drink on their own instead of trying to give them everything. but you're the one that's providing the oversight. So I tried to give you a lot. Is everybody ready for the 50 question test?
Yeah, one question I have, Solarzar, is we have to tell the clubs to submit the winners by. So is it a good
That's
idea?
a good, really good question there, Abhijit. And something I didn't really mention, and I'm going to go back to that because there's a promotional thing. As I said, you're using your club contest to promote your area contest. So do all of you have your area contest dates? Okay. Not yet. Try to give yourself notice at least a week in advance of your area contest of your contestants. Now, if one of your clubs says, oh, we're not doing this until this date, fine, you can deal with the exception. But I would say give yourself at least a week because you want your contestants at your dry runs. You want to get them to your dry runs. The dry runs don't need to be 2 weeks in advance. But generally, if we're having a contest next Saturday, not this one, but the next one, we'd want to have a dry run no later than this Saturday coming. So you want to have your contestants in time to get them to the dry runs. Does that help answer where you were going with that, Abhijit? Okay. And
Yes,
decide when your
yes.
dry runs are going to be. So I'd say one of the first things to look for, and hopefully you'll be able to attend the 23rd training, I would say start looking for a tech chair, start looking for a contest chair, and then think about who could be a potentially good chief judge. And the chief judge, kind of like the Toastmaster, it's nice if they have experience, but if they can read, they could do the job. And I'm going to ask, this is a personal thing. You don't have to do this, but please, please, please do not let your chief judges okay, well, we have to do this. Let's go through the rules. It's like, no, it's an important component. It's actually a component that adds some level of credibility to our total contest. Please at least try to do it as if you mean it. Any other questions?
Yes, one more.
Yes, Padma.
What Zoom link can we use for our dry runs and other meetings?
Recommend you use. Go ahead, Abhijit. You were going to say something. You answer.
Yeah, the division directors have a Zoom account. So the division directors should be supporting you with the Zoom links and everything.
Great, thank you.
And just like the audio and video, you use the same link for your dry runs you're going to use for the contest. So let's say your division director suddenly goes to Antarctica and is out of contact with anybody. First, get in touch with Abhijit. But barring that, if you use another Zoom link, use the same one you're going to use for your contest, period. Keep the same technology.
I have a question, Solarzar.
Yes, Sneha.
So, do we have templates for recruiting the functionaries, or do the area directors have to create on their own?
We don't have a template, but can you see my screen where I'm going to the?
No.
But we do have a contest planning template. Can you see that?
You're not sharing.
That's because I'm pretty much one way, Oh, you said no. I thought you said yes. I'm sorry. Can you see this? So we do have this template that you can use for the planning to start filling people in, but we don't have a template for how to ask people. But you can actually find what works best for your approach and the people you're approaching to ask them to fill it, to be a contestant. Now, don't give them this template to put their information in. This is a planning template for you and your contest team. But we do have this for an idea of what you're looking for. So going back, you can count up Rovina's 14 people. But remember, you need at least 5 judges. You need 2 ballot counters, 2 timers, and however many contestants you have. So that helps you do some planning. Does that help, Sneha, with the question or
Yes. Right.
any other questions?
Do you also have the list of responsibility for each of the roles?
We have actually I got to change that because it says table topics anyway. We have, I'm not sharing. I know I'm not sharing, so. We have there's a briefing checklist. Okay, come back. We have a briefing checklist that covers a lot of the duties and responsibilities that is in there. And it may not, if it doesn't have what you're doing, just send me an email. So, you know, but it kind of goes through a lot of this that gives the idea of the responsibilities and duties. But like I said, if you're not getting, especially those who are new to this, if you're not getting what you're looking for, just send me an email.
I thought
One,
your slides have a pretty good description of responsibility for each role.
which it does, and the slides are also up there on that site. So if you're not getting some or you have a specific question, ask me. 2 reasons to ask me. 1, I'll get an answer whether I have it or not. And 2 is we want to make sure we update the district information so it's giving everybody the information they need to be most effective. Again, 2 things. It's planning it. Don't sweat that it's got to be, you know, empty. It's planning it, knowing what's critical and important as much as you can, and following the scripts. If you do that more than anything else, you're going to be successful. And get your 14 people from Rovina, because she's already got a lot. Any other questions?
15. I left one out, I think, so 14 or 15. I'll count again.
I just wanted to ask if we have the recording of this meeting available because I joined in late. I'd like to review the first part or the half that I missed.
Yeah, the recording will be available. I don't know when Abhijit will make that available, and but it will be available. The answer is yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I also re-put in the Google Drive listing. Make sure you get that. So where it has all the forms. And I'll be updating that with, I'm going to be adding in some sample emails and things like that that you can use as guides. Guides, you don't have to use them.
I have one more question.
Yes, Neil.
What happens when in a situation when there are no contestants from any club or like what, I mean, for the area contest?
Abhijit, do you want to address that? Oh, he may not be with us anymore. Well, there is a process for that. I'm going to have to look it up. There actually is. The last 2 years, Toastmaster came out with something. So you see, we don't know everything, but came out with something of what to do in that situation. So I will look that up and we'll send it out to the registration list. So I apologize. That's why I was actually deferring to Abhijit immediately, because I thought he might have it at the tips of his fingers. And he let me down. He failed me. He destroyed me. He left me abandoned and afloat on this island. So yes, there is a thing, but I would encourage the idea of holding some form of a contest, even if it's not official, to try to get your members engaged in doing it. You know, now you want to talk to your division director about that as well, but I wouldn't force anybody to be a contestant. But sometimes, even in the international, I might not qualify for the international because I don't have the two paths. But you might be able to encourage people who don't qualify to come up, give us some motivational or entertaining speech or something like that. Just come up and participate and make it a contest for them. But you can't move them forward.
Okay.
But there is a thing Toastmaster put out. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Well, I've kept you past time and I apologize for that. I know your parents may be picking you up right now and they're outside in the rain waiting to take you home.
So Solarzar, in the interest of time, will you go over if two areas want to combine and do a contest? Can
Yeah,
you speak to that?
I'm willing
please?
to do that, but
I think
if
a
people don't
number
want
of
to,
us are here for that.
yeah, if people don't want to attend for that, stay for that, you're welcome to leave. If you want to hear, I will discuss that now. We'll just go into it. Okay, so here's the thing, is that very often, it won't happen at a division level, but very often at an area level, areas get together and combine. Going back to Sneha's question about contestants, maybe out of her area, she only gets one contestant. Her sister area over here has 3 contestants or 2 contestants. So you can actually do a combined contest. Now, here's a couple of things to keep in mind. Each area contest is independent from the other area's contest. And I'm going to explain that in a minute. The event is the same. So let's say we're doing tall tales. You have one Toastmaster, one chief judge. You have one set of judges. Once again, it's one set of judges. You're going to balance them out. If you've got 3 clubs, you've got to have at least 5. But if you have 3 clubs, you could have 2 judges from each club. Or you could have judges from other clubs that don't have contestants. It doesn't matter, but you have to have at least 5. But what happens is you then introduce each area and area contestants in turn. So for instance, we do this often in Division A. And as a matter of fact, as Helen mentioned when she posted it on the district calendar, for instance, we're going to do an area A1, A2, A3, A4 contest. So what will happen is, and we may flip a coin to see who goes first. We can go chronologically or any way possible, but the Toastmaster will introduce area A4 Tall Tales contest. Our first speaker is Jamal George. Jamal George, can you see me? Can you answer yes? Jamal, can you see the timer? Yes. Are you ready? Yes. Timer, are you ready? Yes. Jamal George. Why I became a division director. Why I became a division director, Jamal George. Now she's done. Maybe she was the one contestant. Then we now go to Ryan Brown. We say area A3. Area A3 Tall Tales contest. Our first contestant, Ryan Brown. Ryan, can you see me? We go through the same thing. Can you hear me? Can you see the timer? Ryan Brown. Why I'd rather not be speaking today. Why I'd rather not be speaking today. Ryan Brown. Then when all the A3 people are done, then we go to the next area. Now you don't, like I said, you don't have to do them A1, A2, A3, A4. You don't have to do them in that order. You can decide by a randomizer. You can use the same randomizer you used for speaking order to determine the orders of the areas for your contest. Or if it's just 2, what we've often done is, for instance, let's say it was A3 and A4, we might do A3 first in the first contest, A4 first in the second contest. But each end, judges must judge each area independently. So A1 is not competing against A2 in a combined area contest. And A2 is not competing with A3, A3 is not competing with A4. They're all judged independently. So the judges have separate ballots. It's compiled separately for each area, and each contest is independent within the structure of the total event. Does that make sense? Okay, now you have to make some extreme modifications to the script for that, because you have to put that in. You have to add that in. And the first year that we did these scriptings for the district, they're all in PDFs. which people objected to because they couldn't adjust it. So you're not getting PDFs, they're Word documents. But you have to really carefully coordinate that part of it. And that's also why when you're doing dry runs for a combined contest, you want to explain to the contestants the order. So if I'm the only contestant in one of the areas, obviously, you can go ahead and pretend to go through a speaking order for me, but it doesn't matter. It's really, when does my area speak at that point? So, but if there's more than one contestant in an area, there's going to be a speaking order for the contestants and a speaking order for the area. Are they going to be first, second, third, or fourth? Does that help, Jamal? Does that help Ravina or any others who are interested?
Yes.
See there in terms of how many people you recruit then, right? I mean, you
Well,
would have, if you're combining, let's say, like Helen's combining 4 areas, let's say, then you're, instead of the 14 people that you have to recruit for each area contest, you're just recruiting 14 for this entire marathon.
Yes. Yeah, it does help in that regard. And of course, one of the reasons that we had discussed at the area level of doing this in Division A, because we often had combined contests anyway in the different areas, but of doing all of them is because we lost so many clubs. And going back to Sneha's question, the clubs may not have the interest of all of them. They generally haven't in the past, all of them wanting to have contestants. So let's turn the event into an event. And it doesn't hurt me to see your speech or you to see my speech, even if we're going to both compete at division level later, because we're not really competing with each other. Maybe we'll up our game a little bit. It doesn't hurt in that regard.
So in what event would we club the area contest? I joined a little late, so I'm sorry if it was already addressed.
I'm sorry, Charu. Is that the right way to say that?
Yes, that's absolutely right.
Okay, so I'm sorry. Could you please ask the question again? Because I'm not sure what you didn't understand, so I'm not sure how to answer it.
Okay. I didn't understand in what event would we have combined contests
Oh,
areas.
often it happens, for instance, in Division A, it's been traditional for a while because of the number of participants from each area. So for instance, let's say area A1 has only 2 contestants. They might have 6 clubs, but they only have 2 contestants.
Okay.
And area A2 only has 1 contestant. So instead of having 2 separate events with all the staging, all the functionaries, all the prep work, we've often combined them to just make it a combined event. And we get to maximize, as Ravina says, we minimize the number of functionaries needed because we only need them for 1 contest instead of 2, but we also maximize attendance at 1 event.
Okay. But won't it be a long drawn event then if there's so many people?
Well, if every area had 6 clubs and every area had 6 contestants, it would be. What I'm saying is we've done this due to a lack of contestants coming from the areas.
Got it. Thank you.
And so you shouldn't, if you don't need to do it, you don't have to consider like this is something you should be doing.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Can we combine one area from B with one area from C? Or does it have to be in the same division?
I wouldn't recommend that. I try to keep it in the same division. I wouldn't recommend that. However, I got to tell you, there's no rule, but I wouldn't recommend it.
And slightly off topic, are the division and the district contests also online?
Yeah, all contests this year are online. Abhijit, while you were gone earlier, the question was raised by Sneha about what do you do if there's no contestants from an area? I know TI had put out some guidance on that. I just didn't recall what it was. Do you?
I don't know the guidelines, but suppose if a club nominates someone and there is only 1 nomination, that person carries over to the division.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah, that's actually the rule I was thinking of in this. Yes.
Okay.
So yes, so in the absence of an area, if one club does it, they can still advance to the next level.
the clubs don't have to hold the contest. If they hold, that's good. But if they just nominate one person, that's fine too.
Yes, that's correct. Thanks for sharing that. Also, I want to recommend, it's recommended at division level that your judges have at least served at an area level. We recommend at an area level, your judges at least have been a judge at a club level, but that may not necessarily hold. And of course, at district, we also hold that they've at least served at a division level for the judges. But thank you, Abhijit. Thanks for clarifying. That was the rule. I knew I was missing something. Thank you. Any other questions?
I have two questions, Solarzar. One is regarding protesting. So it can be any member, anyone from the audience can protest.
No. Only judges or contestants.
And is it a private message that they send to the chief judge?
The way I usually do it is I ask for a private message to me. Yes, private message or a text with the protest.
Okay, got it.
So the chief judge can work that out with you and the contest chair the best way, but it should be private. It shouldn't be public. You don't put in the chat to everyone, hey, I don't like that speech. I think they plagiarized it. You definitely don't want to do that. It is private. And keep in mind too, your judges are private too. People shouldn't be running around saying, hey, I'm going to be a judge at the area contest. We're supposed to protect them.
And it's a chief judge who can disregard or accept.
No, they should never disregard. When I said I disregard, it was not appropriate, but I was explaining to you why I did in that instance. It's never appropriate to ignore a protest, but the protest can only come from a contestant, can only come from a judge. Plus, it should be appropriately submitted, however the chief judge has defined that. So as I said, a couple of things happened in that contest. One, it wasn't appropriately submitted to begin with. That's the first thing. And I've gone over protests with that individual several times, as a matter of fact, but it wasn't appropriately submitted. And the contestant was the last of all the contestants, was not even going to come close to being in the top three. So in the interest of time, because it was starting to run a little long, in the interest of time, I did not hold the judges in for doing the protest. And was the protest appropriate? It was actually appropriate, but chose not to do it. And I did speak to the contestant afterwards. But it's never appropriate to ignore a protest. Just because I did it doesn't mean you should follow me. I'm a bad example and a bad role model.
So what I meant by ignore is it can be validated or invalidated, right? The chief judge can review and make sure.
No, the judges with the chief judge review.
I see.
Yeah. So, and also what had happened is the protest came in during the ballot tally after the judges had left the breakout room. I mean, there's a whole lot of things that happen with that experience. I don't regret it, but there's a whole lot of things that happen. But when a protest comes in, the chief judge will convene, unless, let's say, for instance, a protest comes in and says, I don't like the blouse that speaker was wearing. Well, I'm not going to convene the judges to review that. It's got to be eligibility, originality, or there was a reference to another speaker's presentation. So if it comes in for that, then the judges are convened. I'll ask the tech chair to move us to a breakout room. We'll present the protest. Then we'll ask the contestant to come forward. If necessary, the person making the protest will be brought in. If necessary, sometimes it's not. And then we'll ask the contestant to come in and respond to the protest. Then they leave, then the judges vote.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, this is good to know. And then one last question is, if I'm a contestant, can I take on a functionary role in another area? Because they're lacking, they couldn't find any other functionary roles.
Yeah, not at the contest that you're a contestant in. Yeah. Sure. You can, yes.
Okay. Isn't it a conflict of interest because I'm a judge?
Well, you said functionary, so I wasn't thinking that person was a judge.
I see.
I think a contestant should avoid being a judge. I think area directors and division directors should avoid being judges, but certainly avoid it in your area if you're an area director or division director. But yeah, and contestants should avoid being a judge. Or if
Got
they
it.
wanted to be a ballot counter or a timer or, something else.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
I want to say one thing. What Solarzar mentioned about the tiebreaker judge. Make sure you have the tiebreaker judge, because in Toastmasters, you cannot have two people being first. You need to have the tiebreaker judge. Back to you, Solarzar.
Yes. And this is where actually I believe you can help each other the most. You can be each other's tiebreaker judges if you're available. I think that's the best way you can help other areas and participate in other contests. Any other questions?
To clarify the tiebreaker judge, that person just
Bless you.
orders all the contestants. That's what he does, right? He
He
doesn't
or
give
she. It can be
he
a
or
she.
she.
Yeah.
Yeah, just orders the contestants and provides the order. Who comes? Okay,
Well, they're
who's
doing
on
the
top?
same judging. They're using a judging form. The only difference on their form is that they rank all the contestants in order. Whereas on the typical judging form, you only rate your top three.
Got it.
So they rank everyone because actually one of the tie breaks that I've went through from the tiebreakers judges ballot, they were like number 5 on the tiebreakers judges ballot, but they came up before the other one. So that broke the tie.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Boy, I want to thank you all. I know that this was probably a lot of information. You may still have questions. The slides are up in that link. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I don't answer any emails, and I turned off my phone service. So
Thank you, Solarzar. Thank you so
other than
much.
that, I'm available. But reach out if you have questions or things come to you, please. And don't be afraid. Just do.
Thank you, Solarzar, for taking the time to do
Thank
this
you, Solarzar.
presentation. We really appreciate it. One thing I want to say.
Super helpful.
Yes.
Right.
It is fun to host a contest. For me, I'd never hosted a club contest, or area contest, or division contest. And suddenly the district director asks me to host a district conference contest. And I was like, oh my goodness. But when I look back 2 years ago, it launched me in the district. It changed the way I did things. It helped me to evolve as a leader. So take this as an opportunity. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Abhijit.
Thank you.